Welcome to Tea Time Teaching. I'm Yvonne, and today I'm going to be discussing the classroom culture in my classroom specifically. Now, everybody has a different approach to building their classroom culture, and if you're wondering what that means, it's basically what's the vibe in your room? How do your kids respond to you? What is your relationship with them? How do you build that? And to make sure that everybody's on the same track. The students remember you by the culture that you build within their classroom, and it's amazing because they remember that. They remember how you made them feel. They remember what it was like being in your classroom, and they will expect that every single time they come in. Students need consistency, and so do you, so that you don't lose your mind. Just some background information. I teach 6th grade math science. I have taught 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, and this is my 2nd year teaching 6th grade. It's wonderful. I love the middle school setting. I do miss the elementary school setting, but I must say that there are some tweaks that I've had to do within my classroom culture to make sure that it is age appropriate. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through questions for you to just kind of think about, and I will be answering them on my part, and maybe you can sit there on your own and self-reflect and think, okay, what are the ways that I do that, and what are some things that I can tweak, and what are some things that I can keep. That rhymed. I'm actually teaming up with other teachers, and I will be leaving their links below because we are all going to be explaining how we create a classroom culture within our classrooms. And you're gonna notice that every teacher is gonna be a little different than the other. As a matter of fact, we might be a lot different. Your classroom culture is dependent on many factors. A lot of this has to do with your personality. It has to do with how you expect your classroom to run, your group of students, the age. Like, I don't want you to have to look at my video and say, oh my gosh, that's the only thing that I'm able to do, so that's what I'm gonna do. Absolutely not. There are so many other great ideas, so please make sure that you check out the links below. Just make sure that you check them all out, because there might be some things that I may not offer that someone else might offer that will totally vibe in your classroom, but not in mine. Does that make sense? So let's go ahead and go through the questions. What 3 words or adjectives describe your classroom culture and why? My first word is respect. And respect doesn't just come from my students, it comes from me. So there's a class chant or a class motto that we have that I teach my kids the first day of school, and it's the only rule that I have in my classroom, and it's respect. So it goes, I respect you, you respect me, and I respect myself. That could cover a huge umbrella of different things, right? But the kids understand that there needs to be mutual respect, and that respect starts with respecting yourself. And if you respect yourself, then you'll understand how to respect others. And a teacher also needs to be respecting you. Now, the kids think that it's amazing that I want to respect them, which is a really sad thing. I would do everything in my best effort to ensure that my students understand that I respect them. And we do a little activity where we create posters, and so one group will make a poster on what does it look like for the teacher to respect you, and another group will create a poster on what does it look like for the teacher to not respect you. And it's amazing what the kids come up with, because it's a lot of things that we grew up seeing our teachers do that we hated, that we end up doing to them because that's just how it was. And I try to make sure that I don't fall into that trap. But they also make posters as well on what does it look like for a student to respect a teacher and to disrespect a teacher, and then the same thing, what does it look like for me to respect myself, and what does it look like for me not to respect myself. And we discuss these posters the first week of school, and we keep them up, and we always refer back to them if needed, for students to just remember, we talked about this, this is what was expected from day one. The second word that describes my classroom culture is transparency. Now, when I say transparency, I'm not talking about like having a full-on therapy within my classroom, but sometimes we do. I've noticed that teaching math and science can get very dry, especially when the kids want to get to know you. So I constantly am trying to have connections back to my life in science, in math. I was a terrible student in math, and I tell my kids that, like, I felt dumb, I didn't understand math, and sometimes I'm one lesson ahead of you guys. So please be patient with me. I will be patient with you, and let's learn together. And the kids love that. They love that their teacher's not perfect. They need to understand we're all human. We all make mistakes. We're all imperfect. We have different strengths. We have different weaknesses. And if we could be okay with accepting those things about ourselves, it's easier to accept them from somebody else and not judge them for it. So I love the transparency within the classroom, and the kids tend to really pick up on that attitude. They're also more open to share when they don't understand something, because if a student is struggling, the hardest thing I would say for learning for students that feel insecure is to say, I don't get it, in front of the whole class. And we make sure that there's no public shaming for anyone who doesn't understand it as fast as we would. Another word that I would use to describe my classroom culture is intentional. Everything that I set up for my students, everything that we do together is intentional. I've thought it through. I've made sure that there's a reason why we're doing it. The students need to understand the purpose of why they're doing an assignment. They need to understand what is the purpose of why they have to talk to their partner, and why do they have to speak in front of the class, or why do I have to use complete sentences. Everything is intentional for their future. Everything is intentional for their understanding of how to communicate with one another, how to make sure that you are meeting a certain criteria, having a rubric. Everything in my classroom has to be intentional, because if not, then the students are going to know that it's not intentional, and they're not going to see the purpose behind why they have to do something. And if they don't see the purpose of it, then they're not going to buy into it, and they're not going to want to put in their 100% effort. But I'll get to that next in a minute. What is one activity or routine you do that makes students feel welcomed in your classroom? Sometimes when the kids are coming in, I might say their name. I'll pretend that I'm an announcer and get on the mic, or pretend I'm on a mic and like hold a marker, and as they walk in, I will pretend that I'm announcing them. So for example, if Juan is walking into the classroom and I see him, and as soon as I see him, I'll say, "Welcome, Juan!" And then everybody in the classroom will start clapping. So they feel embarrassed, but at the same time they love it, because you're acknowledging them. You know their name. Oh my gosh, you know their name. Learning names in middle school, and I would say high school, is one of the most challenging things ever. So what I do is, in the beginning of the school year, I will go around the classroom and learn their name. If I feel like I'm not going to be able to remember their name, I will create a little hint. So for example, if I have somebody named Ashley in my classroom and I feel like I'm not going to be able to remember her name, I have a cousin named Ashley. So I'll look at her and say, okay, if I don't remember your name, just say cousin. What I do is I'll stand at the door the first week of school and fist pump them, and as they walk in, I'll say their name. And if I say their name correctly, they can go in. If I can't remember it, they'll give me the hint. And if I don't remember it, I give them a raffle ticket. Another thing with names is I try to make sure that I don't call students by the wrong name and then dismiss it like it's not a big deal. If I accidentally mix up a name, both of those kids get a raffle ticket because I messed up. And the kids love it. They're just like, "Oh, you messed up, you owe them a ticket." But it helps me be accountable to treating them like a person and saying their name correctly, first of all, saying the real name, like who does the name belong to, and just letting them know like your name is valuable and I value you and I want to respect you by knowing your name. So I would say that that is one of the things that I do to help my students feel valuable within the classroom. The next question, number 3, is how do you develop growth mindset? Describe one way. Yeah, let's stick to one way, Yvonne. Okay. Something that I do is I don't allow my students to opt out. And I don't allow them to opt out in many ways. So first of all, I don't allow them to opt out not answering a question. So if I come to a student and I say, okay, what is 7 times 8? And they don't know the answer or they get it wrong, I'll say, I'll come back to you, think about it, and then I go to somebody else and ask them. If they get the right answer, then I'll come back to the student and say, what is 7 times 8? And then they'll give me the answer. I don't allow my students to give up in my classroom. Now, this all ties into how I expect them to have 100% effort within my classroom at all times. One of the mottos that I have is I don't expect 100% grade, I expect your 100% effort. And they understand that that is expected out at all times. I tell them, if your 100% effort gives me a D+, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, you gave me 60% of your efforts, and, or, well, no, that's a 69%, sorry. I got 69% of your work done efficiently with your 100% effort. To me, that is more valuable than you not even trying, which leads to my next motto. If you don't try, you set yourself up to fail. And are you a failure? No. This is something that they are constantly telling themselves over and over. Okay, like, I'm not a failure, I'm not a failure, because guess what? Some of these kids are getting that at home, that they're a failure, that they're gonna be just like their mom, they're just gonna be just like their daddy or whatever. And we have to build them up with those words of affirmation, and you have no idea how much of an effect this has on your students, because they will grow confidence like no other. So please, please, please continue to help your kids confess these positive things in their life, and you do the same for them even when they don't believe it, because you might just be that only positive affirmation that they'll hear that year or that day or whatever. That is how I create growth mindset in my classroom. How do you develop leadership in your students? I do the typical model of teaching, which is I do, we do, you do. Typically, this is how I do it. So I will model, and then I will have a group solve a problem together, and then I'll have them work in pairs. And when they work in pairs, they have to teach each other A and B. So partner A, here we go. This is my talking. So partner A will teach number 1 to partner B, and partner B is just gonna listen. So partner A is going to teach blah 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 how they solve the problem, and then partner B is going to repeat how this person did it. Now then they're gonna switch. So then partner B will say, okay, this is how I solved number 2, and they'll literally solve it on a whiteboard and show them every step that they're doing, and then partner A is gonna repeat everything they just did. Now this is amazing because there's some kids that are more one-on-one students, and they thrive in that small group environment, or even just that one-on-one environment, and they have a chance to teach. They have a chance to be a leader at one point in the classroom. And if they don't understand it and they're just totally lost, then I can come back and help them just walk through it and scaffold them, but they still feel like they kind of taught. Now another thing that I do is if we do an activity or like a quiz, for example, I've done quizzes, and the kids that pass 100% become my leaders. And what I'll do is I'll pair them up with students that either were like my bubble kids or my low kids, and they will go through the questions with those kids and ask them, what questions do you have on these problems? And the leaders will have whiteboards, and they will actually go through every problem with their group and teach them how to do it. Now these kids already have the skills in math, but that doesn't mean that they're natural leaders. So if they're a very bright student and they're really quiet and shy, this gives them a chance to get out of their box and to teach other students, which is amazing because I've already taught it to my kids, and me repeating the way that I did it before sometimes is not effective. But if they hear another student teaching it to them that is a master at this skill, they'll probably accept it and receive it in a different way than they would had I retaught it to them again. Now that doesn't take away from me reteaching to my students. Typically I will reteach to my lower students, but these opportunities for them to be able to teach one another is so powerful. So that is how I'd like to build leadership within my classroom. What is the beginning of class or end of day routine you have that contributes to your classroom culture? So I'm going to give you an example for both. As soon as students walk into the classroom, their job is to be independent learners, and they need to look at the classroom agenda board. And when they look at the classroom agenda board, it tells them the agenda of the day. So typically every day, number 1 is warm up. So it'll say warm up, and it'll tell them what page, what problem in their warm up book. And I literally list every single thing that we're going to do in the class that day. I was that student that needed that order. I wanted to know exactly what was happening in class. I was time driven, I was task driven, and believe it or not, your students will appreciate that they know what's going to come to them that day. I will even take time to review what's on the board and just bring down that stress level for some of the kids, especially the ones that hate math and science. And I'll say, okay class, we only have 5 tasks today, we have 3 tasks today, and I'll say, and that's it, that's all we're gonna do. It's gonna be such a great day. And just setting that tone for your kids versus saying, okay class, we have so many things we need to get done today. We have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to be ready. What? Like your tone sets the tone. Oh, that should be a post. Your tone sets the tone for your classroom. So make sure that you're not setting a stressful tone for your kids, because a lot of them are already stressed. I'm getting so excited with this video, you guys. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just gonna move on. My end of the class routine is cleaning up. I do not let my groups leave their table until I come and check their tables to make sure they are spick and span clean. I get down to the nitty gritty. I'm like, all these books need to be facing the same way. Nothing should be like piled on top of each other. I better not find trash in there. If not, you're not leaving my classroom. And yes, you will be late to the next class, or you'll not go to lunch until it's ready. And the kids absolutely hate it, but then they learn to appreciate the neatness, because if they come in the next period and the period secretary before them didn't clean up the way that they expected, they call them out and they're like, it's not fair, Miss Quinto. We bust our butts to make sure that we have our stuff clean and neat, and they don't. You need to talk to them. So guess what? I do. I talk to them, and there are consequences. It's the golden rule, right? That's my end of the day routine for our classroom culture building. Yeah, that. Is there something new you are going to incorporate this year? Why and where did you get the inspiration? Okay, this summer I signed up for a restorative circles training. Now if you've never heard of it, look it up. It's amazing. I want to start doing check-in and check-out circles, and I'm going to give you a few examples, but basically what you do is you could just stand in a circle in your classroom and have a talking piece, like a little, like a pen or a microphone, and every student gets to have it at one point. You spend the last 10 minutes doing this with your class and propose a question. So I'm going to give you some check-in questions that are examples that I want to start this year that I'm probably going to do the first week of school, and I'm going to try to make it just a routine. So one of the questions is, give me one word that describes how you're feeling. And so I would start as a teacher, or I can offer for the students to start and say, okay, who wants to start? Explain how you're feeling. So maybe I might take my mic and say, I'm feeling ecstatic. And then the next kid will be like, I'm feeling really down. And then the next student will say, I'm feeling happy. You get the point. Another question is, what was the highlight or low point of your weekend? Or what's something you're looking forward to in school this week? Simple, okay? And you also get to learn your students' personalities like this. Now, some examples of checkout questions are, what was your favorite thing about today? What are you looking forward to for the rest of the day, this evening, or this weekend? Give a compliment to someone for something they did well this week. So these are some things that I want to incorporate into my classroom this year, because I want to get to know my kids at a deeper level, and they get to know each other at a deeper level. And it's amazing because kids have no idea how much they have in common until they hear each other speak or share. The last question that I'm going to be answering is, what is one piece of advice you would give a new teacher in regards to creating their classroom culture? I would say that you are responsible for setting the tone in your classroom. So your response is your responsibility, and if you model that to your students, then they will reciprocate, and you can hold them accountable and say, hey, I can do it, you can do it. And I say this because I remember coming in my first couple years teaching, and some days I would just have a bad morning, and I would come into classroom totally down, not feeling the day, and my students felt it because I would come in with a stank face, and my kids are like, Miss Quinto, are you okay? And I'm like, no, like I had such a bad morning, I got here late, blah blah blah. So the kids already know that you're feeling frazzled, and then they're gonna feel like they're walking on eggshells because you have already had a bad day and you got it all over your face, all over your body language. You're already approaching the day in a sucky way, and they feel that. So you're transferring that same spirit onto them. I even have done the same thing even when I get upset in the classroom. If a student gets on my last nerve, or my class is just acting a hot mess, I'll literally change my mood in the middle of that moment and show them what it looks like to basically control themselves. So for example, if I'm mad at my class for not turning in their homework, right? What teacher isn't? I might have a very serious face, and I realize that the whole class has just gotten stressed from this conversation, and they feel down in the dumps, and they don't feel like even smiling at each other. They're just looking down at their books. So what I have to do is I have to lighten up the mood. That's my job as the leader. So I'll say, okay class, I know this was not a very pleasant conversation. I think we got the point. I'm gonna put on my happy face now, and so are you. Are you ready? We're gonna count to 3 and we're gonna do it. And I'll have my stank face on, right? And I'll just be like this. I'll be like 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's get back. We're gonna have a great day. And the kids jump on it. It's that instant how much you have control over your classroom's mood. You are the center. You are the sun in that room. You either bring the light or you bring the clouds, and let your kids feel down. So please, please, teachers, help yourself first. Learn to control your emotions. Learn to respond in a respectful way. Just basically understand that you are responsible for your response. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you are a teacher and you are interested in this teacher tag and you want to create your own video on this topic, please go ahead and do so. Feel free. We are looking for more teachers to add to this playlist so that we can all collaborate and grow together. And thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. And I can't wait to grow with all of you. I'll see you later.